when we had lunch with him earlier today. But we'll wait and see. You never know. The president sees somebody, someone catches his eye, and he starts.
Immigration and enforcement and DHS funding. I saw an email thread last night where you shook the president's hand. I believe it was on the way in, and it suggested that you were the only Democrat who did. Is that true?
I do believe that's true. And now for me, I'm not going to yell or do that. Again, regardless who the president is, I think that's been lost now here for our nation to do that. So for me, yes, I shook his hand, of course. He walked in, and I'm always going to do that, for sure.
So the New York Times wrote.
The rest of people in my party would stand up and clap for. I clapped with a lot of those things that it seemed like others. Like I stood up and I clapped to recognize the family that lost their daughter, the Ukrainian girl that was stabbed to death, in North Carolina. And I stood up and I clapped that political prisoner from Venezuela. How you can't celebrate those kinds of things. And now I also celebrated all the veterans that were in the audience as well too, and even more the political things like Erica Kirk. I stood up and I clapped for her as well too. Now here, can't we just be more kind to a widow? I mean, we just shouldn't be that long ago that a widow, with young children has her husband murdered. How we can't just acknowledge that as well too. Wow. Whether white people would attack her, whether the left or the right either. So. I'm always going to stand up and clap for things that I agreed with like striking the Iranian, sites now for me. I never worry about who's standing up or clapping. If I see it, I'm going to. If I don't agree with it or whatever, I'm certainly not going to yell and scream and disrupt the whole thing.
What's up, family? So we got to talk about John Fetterman because apparently the new political crime in America is wearing a suit and shaking somebody's hand. And the far left is melting down, full emotional meltdown, or breakdown, I should say, because John Fetterman showed up to the State of the Union, dressed like an adult, shook President Trump's hand. That's it. But somehow, however, that's the scandal. Not a new law, not a secret deal, not corruption, a suit and a handshake, folks. So think about how insane that sounds for a second, because you mean to tell me grown adults who claim they care about saving democracy, in this case, we know that the Democrats love to say that, are outraged because a United States senator showed basic manners. But this is where we are now. So I'm going to break it down in simplistic terms. The State of the Union is basically like a big annual meeting, right? It's like where your company has that once a year all staff meeting where the CEO talks about what's going on. Everybody shows up. Everybody sits in the same room. And yes, people shake hands. That's called being civil. That's called acting like a functioning adult. But somehow, because Fetterman shook Trump's hand, people are acting like he joined the cult. And it's honestly ridiculous. And the suit thing, that's what really shows how unserious this outrage is from the Democrats. Because for years, people joked about Fetterman wearing hoodies, gym shorts in the Senate, and now he puts on a suit, which is literally the dress code for that chamber, and suddenly he's a traitor. So let me get this straight. When he dresses down, he's disrespecting the institution. When he dresses appropriately, he's betraying the movement, and this creates the Democrat Party. So what exactly is he allowed to do, let alone he is a Democrat, right? So what is he allowed to do? Show up in pajamas? Because here's what's really going on. Some folks on the far left had decided that even basic human courtesy towards Trump is unacceptable. Not agreeing with him, not endorsing him, just acknowledging him as the president and shaking his hand. That's it. That's the line now, and that's a problem. Because politics is not middle school. This isn't you can't sit at our lunch table if you talk to the wrong person. These are elected officials. Their job is to represent their state, not to perform outrage for social media. Shaking someone's hand does not mean you agree with everything they ever said. It just means you're capable of existing in the same room without acting like a child. And if you can't handle that, maybe you're not ready for politics. And this obsession with optics, with what someone wore, who they greeted, who they didn't clap for, it's shallow. It's surface level nonsense because meanwhile, regular people are worried about rent, groceries, gas, jobs, the economy. And nobody at home is losing sleep because a senator wore a suit. The only people spiraling are the hyper online activists from the radical far left Democrat Party supporters, um, who treat politics like it's a team sport, and any sign of basic respect is called switching sides in this case. So that mindset is toxic, it's not strong, it's not principled, it's fragile. And if your political beliefs fall apart because someone shook hands with another party, maybe your beliefs weren't strong to begin with. And let's be honest, if the roles were reversed, if a Republican shook hands with a Democratic president at a formal event, nobody would be shocked. That's called protocol. That's called professionalism. You don't have to like somebody to acknowledge their office. That's just common sense. So the fact that this is even a controversy tells you everything about how extreme some corners of politics have become. And we got into a point where basic decency is treated like betrayal. And that's not healthy, not for the country, not for political discourse, not for anyone. And you can disagree with someone's policies. You could debate it. You could debate ideas. You could vote against them, but losing your mind over a suit and a handshake, that's not activism. That's emotional overreaction, and people need to start calling that out. So now I want to show you guys the next clip.
To me, that it looked so unserious. It looked so stupid. Like, what a joke of a country that the pedophile war criminal president is walking up the aisle and you have these Republican sycophants slurping his ball sweat, desperately trying to get pictures so they can post it on their shitty social media. Okay? Also, fuck John Fetterman. He was shaking Trump's hand at the beginning, and he also wore a suit, which by my count is only the second time he's ever worn a suit, because he wore it for when Netanyahu was in town, because he loves war criminals, and now he wears it for Trump. He also loves pedophiles, who are also war criminals. So, hate that guy. He's Diet MAGA. He's the definition of Diet MAGA.
I don't care who the president is. Don't yell and disrupt that. It's like you really should respect the office. The office. You don't have to like the occupant.
That was Senator John Fetterman, who, ever since he had his stroke, almost died. You know, he's not right in the head. He shouldn't be in office. But what he says is what a lot of people say. You need to respect the office. And I beg to differ. I'll tell you why. I'm an old guy. I've seen a lot of presidents. Donald Trump is the first president, by far, the first president who has not respected the office of the presidency. You know, in 2016, people kept telling me, oh, he'll change once he gets into office. And that's been true of every other president over my lifetime. They do change. They try to be more dignified. They do measure their language. Donald Trump has done none of that. He's willfully dragged the office of the presidency down to his own debased, corrupt level. How can you respect the office of the presidency when the person in that office doesn't respect the office of the president?
So with that being said, even for all these people crying online because John Fetterman put on a suit and shook the president's hand like a normal grown man, he still went on CNN, as you guys can see on the screen now, and we'll get to that in a minute, and I'll press play in a second. But he went on CNN and said something that honestly needed to be said. He basically told the CNN anchor straight up that he didn't like the little stunt some Democrats pulled during the president's speech. And yeah, I'm talking about the booing, the heckling, the dramatic faces, the whole performance from folks like Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib while the president was literally giving the State of the Union. And let's slow this down and explain why this matters, because some people act like this is just passion, right? But no, there's a difference between passion and acting out. And the State of the Union is not a campaign rally. It's not Twitter, well, formerly known as Twitter, now known as X. It's not a protest outside with signs and megaphones. It's a formal address. It's like graduation day at school. You might not like the principal. You might disagree with school rules, but when someone is speaking at the podium, you don't start shouting over them and making it about yourself. And that's basic manners. That's basic adulthood. And what Federman was saying in simple terms is that kind of behavior makes the whole party look unserious when it comes to the Democratic Party, which they are unserious, let alone Ilhan Omar. She has done very disrespectful things in regards of not prioritizing her constituents, let alone citizens she's supposed to be representing in Congress, because she allowed, happened to be her race, Somalian immigrants to commit fraud in the name of American taxpayers with fake daycares and so forth. So to hackle just shows you how unserious, how undedicated, and how disrespectful, anti-American these Democrats can be, right? Because Minnesota, with Ilhan Omar representing Minnesota in Congress, and then you have Governor Tim Walz, and then you have Mayor Jacob Frey. I mean, you see it goes down the line of the chain of command of just toxic, anti-American individuals who don't care about nothing but fattening their pockets with party over people and power over the people they represent. And they don't care about the people, I always say. It's party over people. So when you look at that and how unserious the Democrat Party is, it turns politics into reality TV. It becomes a circus. And I always say, if you're a clown, then you should join the circus. And regular people watching at home, they're not impressed. I wasn't damn sure wasn't impressed. And they're not thinking, wow, what brave resistance. They're thinking, why are these grown adults acting like kids in the cafeteria? Because that's what it looks like. Imagine you're at your job. There's a company-wide meeting. The CEO is giving a speech. You don't agree with the CEO, fine. But if you stand in the middle of the meeting, um, start hackling, rolling your eyes, making dramatic faces, interrupting, what happens? You look unprofessional. You don't look strong. You look combative. You don't look principled. You look emotional. You look like you don't have emotional intelligence, and you look out of control. And that's the point. And these individuals are supposed to be representing their states, being elected in Congress on behalf of operating on the behalf of their citizens in their certain states that they represent. How can you have someone who have a childlike behavior with emotional immaturity represent citizens when obviously they don't see that their own stuff stinks, right? They're infatuated with themselves. And if they're not emotional mature to sit there across to somebody that they may not agree with everything they say, they could agree to disagree, but at least be productive when it comes to operating on the behalf of the people that elect them in the first place to represent their state, being positioned in Congress. So it tells you how spoiled and how bratish or Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib being brats, being in their little circle of, being up in Congress and around their people who have also been elected amongst their party and the Democrat Party to represent other states. They don't really feel the real life consequences of their non-cynical bullcrap circus act performative stuff because in their eyes, they made it, right? They made it. They're going to sit there and they continue to get reelected and do what they need to do to stay in their positions up in Congress so they can keep getting reelected for the next 6 years and so forth and so forth. And that's why you have dinosaurs and rhinos, people from yesteryear still up there in Congress that should be gone. Like Nancy Pelosi shouldn't be there. It's people that have been in Congress and still is in Congress for the last 43 damn years, longer than presidents. Been through like, I don't know, 4 or 5 damn presidents. So my whole point is the gravy train to them is living in their own bubble, so they're not affected, but they can sit here and have these circus acts because it doesn't affect their pockets or what they got going on. And I don't believe if you can't sit there and really operate and be productive and do your damn job, then you need to be gone. And I believe that people in Congress need shorter term limits. This is just my opinion. We're having a conversation. Let me know your guys' thoughts about this down below. But how does the president have a shorter term than people in Congress? And then these people in Congress could keep getting reelected. I don't believe that should be the case. I don't believe that should be a thing because then you have people who are so disconnected. They haven't touched grass. They don't see their citizens, let alone their constituents in the states that they represent. And they continue to get reelected and chill as long as the gravy train keep flowing, sitting up there in a bubble and living it up and living large. That's why they can sit here like brats and hackle and sit there and commit fraud in their state like Minnesota, Ilhan Omar, and still be stuck up and prideful like this shit ain't happening in her state. She should be deported. That is just my opinion. If you are going to sit here, come to this country as an immigrant at first, got elected in Congress, which I believe only Americans should be able to be in Congress, not people from other countries. That's just my opinion. I believe you have to already be born in from this country to represent this country. I don't see nothing wrong with it because you won't see an American going over there to Mexico and being a public official over there in Mexico if you wasn't born in Mexico. I believe the same standards should stay here for the United States. See, a lot of these people got spoiled is my point. And I'm all for it coming over here the right way. Legal immigration is always beautiful to migrate. You got different cultures, you know. You could diversify to a certain extent, but uphold American culture. But also it expands the knowledge, and it also expands the talent pool, and also the variety of different individuals being able to commingle but still uphold the United States of America culture while being the land of the free and opportunity than ever before. And also that's what makes American culture beautiful because of opportunities, and capitalism and freedoms that we have and privileges. But I say all that to say that, as you can see, these individuals can get ahead of themselves, and they live in this circle while people that are the actual citizens, like Ilhan, Omar, I keep using that as an example, they live in a square, right? So see, a circle inside of a square is only going to be so far out to touch the parameters of those within that square, which is their citizens, if that makes sense. Hopefully it makes sense if you get where I'm going here. Which is, I'm saying is, you can fit a circle inside of a square, but doesn't mean that the connect is there to be symmetric, to be identical, to have an understanding, to be connected to the point where she can actually feel what her constituents go through. But I bet she won't, because she's so busy making sure fake daycares in her people from her own country and culture she's originally from, like Somalia. She's bringing the schemes and the frauds and stuff over here. So now you got fake daycares and all this. You're not even opening up the daycare to the public. You're being biased and only to your Somalian individuals and constituents that you're allowing to flood the state of Minnesota. And you getting kickbacks while you continue to let them get American taxpayer money with the federal government cutting the check, and there's no kids there. But you paying people hush money to use their kids so the books look right. But that doesn't mean that the actual jobs are taking place and the business is up and running as it says it is. So for her to sit there and heckle with Rashida Tlaib and be disrespectful during the State of the Union, it tells you not only about the Democrat Party, but it tells you about the very people that don't care about American culture. They don't care about their citizens or their constituents. They care about control and power. And that's all the Democrat Party is about. They'll heckle, they'll cry, they have a tantrum like a child to just stay in power. And that's what it shows. And that's what Ilhan Omar and they're showing. They're basically telling you to your face. And it's us, the American people, to continue to make our voices heard, speak out, and make change for the better and be on the right side of history. This is why I do these type of videos, right? To actually add impact and add value and get people to be on the right side of history, upholding Christian values, and also not taking my advice as not taking advice of man, but take it to God, but also do your own research. I'm here just to get the juices flowing and get you to productively be thinking. Now, and I say all that to say, like I said, you don't agree with the CEO, right? The CEO is giving a speech. There's a company-wide meeting. This is basically what the State of the Union is like. But when you start being emotionally immature and you start interrupting, making faces, um, you look emotional and out of control. And that's the point. Federman wasn't defending Trump's policies. He wasn't switching teams. He's still a Democrat. He was saying, this is not how we should behave in that setting. And that's common sense, right? You can oppose someone's ideas without turning a formal event into a clown show. Because when you do that, you're not hurting the president. You're hurting your own credibility. You're making your side look chaotic. And let's be real. The same people who are mad at Federman for shaking a hand are the same ones cheering when their side breaks decorum. So which is it? Do you want professionalism or do you want theatrics? You can't scream about saving democracy while acting like rules and norms don't matter and fraud is taking place in the name of American taxpayer dollars. That's not scrim, that's hypocrisy. And Federman going on CNN and saying that he didn't like it, which we're about to get into in a second, that took more backbone than people want to admit it. Because it's easy to go along with the get along and go along with the mob. It's easy to clap and nod and pretend the heckling was some heroic moment. It's harder to say, nah, that wasn't it. That made us look bad. And that's what adults do. They call out their own side when they're wrong. And that's why this whole situation matters. It's not about a suit. It's not about a handshake. It's about whether politics is going to be about serious debate or about viral moments and emotional outbursts. And right now, too many people are choosing the circus. And we need these people to get off their ass and actually do their job and operate on behalf of American people and American citizens and legal immigrants that are legal and came here and done things the right way, who are citizens as well. Donald Trump can't do it all by himself, right? Because you have separation of powers. Judicial. We know that Trump is executive. He's the chief in office. You know, he can control the monies and cut it off when it comes to fraud and things like that, federal monies. And then you have Congress, right? So Congress is the ones that, yeah, he may propose a bill, but then they have to vote on it. But we have to make sure these people don't stall and continue to be heckling and crying and making tantrums and get the shit done. That's on the behalf of what we're asking for as American people, American taxpayers, in which them as public officials, we know Trump doesn't take a salary, and that's honorable of him. And he's a wealthy man and he's doing God's work, I believe. But I say all that to say that the ones who do take a salary, they're getting paid by us, the American taxpayer, and they need to get off their ass and do what they need to do and get out their bubble. But we have to continue to hold them to the fire, and this is how we do it. Continue to speak about it productively, civilly, not in violence, not, but actually have a conversation that's worth having, and also calling your local governor, right? Calling the individuals such as the senator who represents your state. And that's how you get them moving. So that's why I do what I do. And this is why I do these videos. But no further ado, let's get into John Fetterman. Because the reaction to what Federman said tells you a whole lot about where parts of the Democrat Party are mentally right now.
Fetterman, thank you so much for being here.
Good to be back.
Why did you think it was important to shake President Trump's hand?
Well, of course, that's the president. You don't have to agree with everything. You can be in a different party. I think it's just basic respect and courtesy, whether it's for the office or whether it's just kind of, I can't think we can get to the place where, the State of the Union can't turn into like the Springer show.
Do you think your colleagues, Ilhan, Omar, Rashida, Tlaib, conducted themselves the right way by that metric?
I'm saying I just disagree with that. It's not my, I'm not going to criticize it, but I'm going to say that's just not something I choose. And I think I walked around and I realized that half my colleagues were gone. And now if they want to boycott it, that's their choice. But I think overall, I don't see that coming back to, I remember back in 2009 when, I forget his name, Joe Wilson, yelled. I mean, that was really provocative and shocking to people. And that had bipartisan, they condemned that. And now here it's just part of the now where it's just kind of like, here it is. So
And think about that, family. What kind of question is that? Seriously. Why did you shake the president's hand? That's how Casey Hunt started out asking John Fetterman from the beginning, right? You guys heard it. That's the big, hard-hitting journalism question from CNN. That's all you got, CNN? That's the big question. That's where we are right now. You got a United States senator sitting in front of you after the State of the Union, the biggest political speech of the year, and the first thing you could ask him is why he shook the president's hand. That's like watching a championship game, and instead of asking about the plays, the strategy, the score, you ask a player why he high-fived the other team after the game. This is basic sportsmanship. It's basic manners, but somehow in politics now, basic manners are treated like treason. When like people like Ilhan Omar in the Democrat Party is actually the party of treason, right? And that tells you everything about how unserious this has become. And then she asks him if Trump is part of the new normal. What does that even mean?
I think something's lost when, if that becomes like the new normal.
Do you think President Trump is responsible for that new normal?
I think we're all part of it too, and I do.
The man is the president of the United States, President Donald J. Trump, right? So whether you like him or not, that's reality. That's like asking if your boss is part of the new normal. He's the boss. He's there. You can't pretend he's imaginary. And when people are openly heckling during the State of the Union, booing and rolling their eyes, making a whole scene, we are supposed to act like that's fine? Nancy Pelosi literally ripped up Trump's speech on national TV a few years ago. That happened. So when people ask why is this the new normal, maybe look in the mirror at the Democrat Party. Democrats help set that tone. You don't get to light the house on fire, Democrats, and then complain that it smells like smoke, Democrats. And here's where Federman made a really, really interesting point: the hypocrisy. Because the same far left crowd that is crying about him shaking Trump's hand had zero problem with Zohran Mudami, and he's going to connect that. And I want you guys to hear it.
I think we have to find a way, if we can be in the same room, we can disagree on these things. You don't have to sign off on everything. You don't have to agree with everything. And now, if I hear something that I agree with or I like that, hey, I'm going to stand up and clap for those things. And I think, and if someone's angry that I shook the president's hand as he walked in, that's I think that's on them. And I think some of the people that were angry that I did that, they didn't really have a problem when Mandami visited with the White House too. So, like, if we refuse to talk to the other side, I mean, that's the only one that really loses. That's America.
Some people were surprised.
Bingo. That was the mic drop right there. Because Zohran Mudami went to the White House, was all smiles, zero problem. In fact, they defended it, the Democrats. They twisted themselves into knots trying to explain it. Oh, he's playing 5D chess. Oh, he's using Trump. Oh, he's strategically engaging. Right? They turned it into some mastermind move. So let me get this straight. When Zohran Mudami meets the president at the White House and is apparently building some kind of relationship, that's genius strategy. But when Federman shakes the man's hand at a formal event, that's betrayal. Make that make sense. It's like when your friend does something and you call it networking, but when someone you don't like does the exact same thing, now it's selling out. Same action, different reaction. That's hypocrisy. And let's be honest, Zohran Mudami has openly said he still talks to the president. The president has hinted they still talk. There's clearly some level of communication there. And somehow that doesn't trigger outrage with Fetterman, who, by the way, is still a Democrat, gets treated like he switched parties because he refuses to act like a middle schooler. That's wild to me. And here's the part people don't want to admit. Fetterman isn't agreeing with Trump on everything. I disagree with Fetterman on a lot of policy, right? And I can tell you why. Because I can respect that John Fetterman sometimes speaks independently and doesn't always follow the typical partisan script as a bot. Because we know Hakeem Jeffries is like a robot. He's the Timo Obama, the cheap Dollar General, Family Dollar Obama version of Obama, to the point where every time he talks, it's like he's reading a script, replaying in his mind. But when you actually look at John Fetterman policy positions, we come from two different, completely worldviews about what government should be doing and who it should prioritize. I align with President Trump's America First because I'm pro-America, right? So I align with the American First agenda because I believe the federal government's first responsibility is protecting American citizens. Now, we see how that played out in the State of the Union when Donald Trump asks, if you believe that prioritizing American citizens over illegal immigrants is important, as a public official, stand up. And the Democrats didn't. So that told you right there where they stand. Mic drop. And that was the monumental moment. And Donald Trump was so smart to pull that off because he didn't. It could have been a slap in the face. The Democrats could have stood up. He didn't know how that was going to pan out. But I'll say all that to say that going back to John Fetterman and why I disagree with John Fetterman is because, and why I align with Trump is because I believe the federal government's first responsibility is protect American citizens, American workers, American economic strength before anything else. And on several major issues, Federman policies goes into the opposite direction, right? From a conservative standpoint, right? A country has to control who comes into it, right? We know Trump's emphasis on strong border enforcement, immigration laws, enforced consistently across the board, limiting illegal entry before offering reforms. Federman supports immigration reform that includes protections for undocumented immigrants and humanitarian programs alongside enforcement. The disagreement is simple because America first is secure the border first because uncontrolled immigration constrains schools, housing, healthcare system, and wages for working Americans. Federman approaches prioritize reform and protections at the same time. What is humanitarian? Why should the American taxpayer pay for humanitarian acts to help a criminal in the name of, oh, we need to be gentle and give them due process and be light on a criminal who wasn't light on disrespecting and coming to the country illegally in the first place. And now we got to use American taxpayer dollars to, in the name of being soft and doing a humanitarian act. The illegal would never take America serious, right? And then when it comes to Fetterman, he supports, when it comes to government spending and social programs, he supports maintaining and expanding federal social safety net programs like Medicaid and food assistance, right? And my concern would be more federal spending, higher deficits which will lead into inflation and higher taxes over time, and we'll never pay off the national debt or the debt that we have in this country that keeps accumulating from giving money and spending more of American taxpayer dollars being printed. So, and me being America first and pro-America, I focus more on economic growth through jobs and private investment rather than expanding federal programs. Because if you actually focus on prioritizing bringing more money and businesses back to America, and then jobs are expanding, and then people who are able-bodied are able to work, then that will lower how much taxes, which means there will be more money into the worker's check, because then you have a job opportunity aligned with all the businesses coming in and America investing back into America first, right? And the jobs is growing economically and the wages could go up, but wages can't go up while we keep being taxed to death, asking for in these states, like in the Democrat, like Federman, asking for more spending to help people that's on the government daddy. A woman, for example, open up her legs constantly and see a single mother. And I'm not against single mothers, but I'm saying don't keep having kids you can't afford, but then I got to get taxed to death in the name of it to give more social programs like food stamps because you want to keep having kids that you should be responsible for. That's not my responsibility, but in the name of taxes, I got to keep paying for it out of my check. And then now I can't get, I have to keep, I have to keep getting taxed for it. And now I can't have more money that I work hard for to myself. And then you wonder why we can't get ahead. And then the more money they print and pass when it comes to keeping the government open and the budgeting, the checks and balances for how much these programs keep going up by the Democrats. And then you wonder why individuals are struggling to make ends meet and living paycheck to paycheck while we keep getting taxed more with the money they print. So I'm pro-America. If you able-bodied, stop trying to finesse, stop trying to do the trickery and sit on your behind and work. If you able-bodied and do something with yourself. I'm a man of faith. My God says, if a man don't work, a man don't eat. And I wholeheartedly believe that. So I say all that to say, I just want to give an example that I don't agree with a lot of Federman positions, even though he thinks for himself independently. And I can respect someone who says, like Federman, I'm not going to automatically oppose something just because Trump said it. That's called having your own brain, right? That's called being an independent thinker, like I said about Federman. So if Trump said the sky is blue and some Democrats will look outside and say, no, it's not. That's the energy when it comes to this Democrat Party. And it's the Trump derangement syndrome. And Trump exposed that during the State of the Union when he basically challenged them. Stand up if you want to put American citizens first. I'm going to say it again. Stand up if you want to protect Americans over illegal immigrants. And they wouldn't do it. Not because they necessarily disagree with every single word, but because they refuse to give them even a second of agreement. It's pure opposition for the sake of opposition. And Fetterman doesn't play that game. He's not clapping like a seal, but he's also not booing just to boo. He's not ripping up papers like Nancy Pelosi when she ripped up Trump's speech from years back. He's not performing outrage for social media. And that's exactly why the far left is mad at him. Because when one person on your team refuses to follow the script of hate every hate everything Trump does at all costs, it exposes how fake the script is.
Surprised you wore a suit and tie.
I'm not sure why that's news. Yes, I do. I do dress like a slob, but I mean, for me, I'm gonna respect the event. Respect that's the dress code, of course. So for me, it was an opportunity to hear these things, and you know, I think there was enough there that I could say, hey, I want to acknowledge that I think that's a good thing.
You obviously have spoken with President Trump. You've met with him in the past. What was the last time you spoke to him privately?
No, I mean, it's just one of the things that was perhaps might make unique amongst the Democrats. I supported the Iranian strike last year, and I think every single senator in this agrees that we can never allow Iran to acquire a nuclear weapon. And if we all agree with that, you know, I think harsh language won't be the solution. And now we've all discovered that a treaty or those kind of negotiations were unsuccessful. So the one thing that really did matter, and I think was impactful, was those kinetic kinds of strikes. And now here we are, might be again, where now they have another issue in that those missiles that they have, and now China is selling those hypersonic missiles there. That's outrageous. That's effectively the Chinese are selling that technology that would be aimed right at American ships, and I'll call and hold them accountable for that.
So would you urge President Trump to strike Iran in the interests of regime change there?
Well, I do think if you can, I mean, Iran absolutely wants to acquire a nuclear bomb, and Iran has done, they built up Hamas and Hezbollah and Houthis. So clearly, and now Iran executed tens of thousands of their young people, and now the brutality for that. So, you know, Iran and that regime, the war is never about the Iranian people. Actually, their war was also against Iranian people. But for me, it's about the regime, and now here it's teetering, and now here we are. So that's why I would not vote for the Iranian powers resolution, because the president will need to have the flexibility for these kinds of targeted attacks.
Fair enough. Let's turn to the midterm election.
All right. Well, I'm going to leave it there. So, like I said, it exposes how fake the script is. Fake the script is with the Democrat Party, but it shows that maybe, just maybe, you can disagree with someone without acting like they're untouchable. And the contrast between Mudami situation and Federman shaking a hand makes that hypocrisy crystal clear. One gets excuses, the other gets praise. The other gets backlash and accusations. Same basic idea, interacting with the president, totally different reaction. And that tells you this isn't about principles, it's about control. It's about punishing anyone who doesn't fall in line with the emotional anti-Trump at all times mindset. And Fetterman's not perfect. Like I said, I don't agree with most of his policies. I gave you examples. But on basic decency, on not turning politics into a circus, on not pretending the president doesn't exist, he's right. And the fact that that's controversial tells you just how upside down parts of our politics have become. So, when you look at all that, the CNN anchor clearly didn't like the fact that John Fetterman actually agrees with the president on some things, not everything, not most things, but some things. And apparently that alone is a problem now, because in today's Democrat Party, if you're not 100% anti-Trump 100% of the time, people start looking at you sideways. And that's crazy. It's honestly a breath of fresh air to see somebody say, yeah, I disagree with him here, but I agree with him there. And without acting like they just committed a sin. That's normal human behavior, and that's how adults operate in real life. And if your coworker has 10 bad ideas and one good one, you don't reject the good idea just because you don't like the person. You say, that one makes sense. That's it. That's called thinking for yourself. And let's keep it real. Federman is still a Democrat. He should stay a Democrat. And I see people saying, oh, well, he should switch parties. No. That's not the point. The point is, Democrats need somebody on their side who isn't completely driven by emotion, who isn't just reacting to Trump like it's a reflex. Every team needs at least one person willing to say, hold on, hold on, hold on. We doing too much now. And if everybody in the room is yelling, you need one person who says, relax. That doesn't make him a Republican. That makes him sane. Now, policy-wise, like I said, I disagree with him a lot. Let's not pretend otherwise, but I can respect that. What I can respect is that he doesn't just oppose something because Trump's name is attached to it. He's not just anti-Trump as a personality trait. He's willing to stand there in front of his own party and say, "Nah, I don't agree with that behavior. That matters. That's leadership." And when he called out Democrats for turning the State of the Union into a spectacle, the booing, the heckling, the theatrics, that was important. Because if you're constantly screaming about, how can I put this, civility, or being civil, I should say. I don't want to botch the word already. I'm not cutting that out either. But being civil and bringing the country together, and then you act like that when the cameras are on, what message are you really sending? Right? If you're heckling and booing and acting like a child when the cameras are on, you can't say you want unity while attacking the one guy on your side who's actually trying to lower the temperature. That's the funny part. The same people who say Trump is the reason we're divided, the same people who say we need to heal the country, are going after the Democrat who is literally trying to bridge the gap by being respectful, by acknowledging reality, by not treating the president like he's Voldemort, right? They don't hate Federman because he's extreme. They hate him because he's not extreme enough. Because one person refuses to play the outrage game. It exposes how performative the outrage really is. And if your whole political identity is built on hating one man, and somebody on your own team says, "I'm not doing that," it threatens the whole vibe. And that's why he's important. Not because he's perfect, not because he's conservative, but because he shows that you could be a Democrat and not lose your mind every time Trump breathes. That shouldn't be revolutionary. That should be normal. So yeah, Democrats need fewer people like Fetterman. Don't need fewer people like Fetterman. They need more people like Fetterman, not fewer. They need more. And they need people willing to think independently, to break from the script, to say, this ain't it, when their side goes too far. Because if you really want to end divisiveness, it starts with being able to sit in the same room, shake a hand, and not act like that's betrayal. And the fact that that's controversial tells you just how backwards this has gotten. So y'all let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, share, and subscribe. And if you're already part of the family, I appreciate you for being part of the family and rocking with me. And if you're new to the channel, subscribe and join the family. And for just watching this video, I appreciate that too. I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.